Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video, we do have yet another Alephium ASIC coming from IceRiver. This is that mid-tier unit they were teasing a few days ago. They have announced both the Alephium unit as well as the Kaspa unit. Out of the two though, the Alephium one is definitely the more appealing unit, so that's the one we're going to focus on. We do have specs, pricing, shipping windows, we'll look at profitability, we'll look at the outlook, and how this Alephium ASIC by itself is yet again going to change the pricing structure of all Alephium ASICs. Okay, it's changing the game yet again. So like we've mentioned over and over, it's a repeat of what happened with Kaspa, and here's another example. Okay, so if that sounds good guys, stay tuned. Let's get right to this thing. Oh man, these icy boys messed up my morning. I was already ready to go out for a run. Took my pre-workout like 30 minutes ago, so I am even more hyped. But this news dropped, and this is a game-changing announcement that is something I've been waiting for. So immediately just wanted to run numbers just to get a quick feel for it. So just going to share it. So 2 units, KS2 Lite, AL2 Lite. Here's the box. Going to look very, very similar to this guy, to the ALPH 2 Plus. Okay, it looks like the same, pretty much form factor, same size. It's going to be within the same ballpark. On the other side, it's probably going to be the 2 fans. Again, very similar to that gold shell unit, which is kind of interesting. The big standouts on the unit, though, integrated power supply, which you see on the bottom here, which again, very reminiscent of this guy. The other big things, you see the Ethernet port as well as what looks like the Wi-Fi dongle. Okay, so this is pretty convenient. So form factor wise, both of them are 500 watts. This is a true at-home miner, right? You can plug it in anywhere, being with this capacity, unlike those Echo series, which are extremely limited because of that. I love the Wi-Fi aspect. That way you can throw it in a spare bedroom, so that works. Now let's look at the specs. So the Kaspa one, honestly, not interested at all. Prices are so rock bottom that on the small front, zero interest, right? At this point, 500 bucks for 2 terahash when you could spend 2,500 bucks, so 5 of those, and get 20 terahash versus 10 terahash there, right? As well as the efficiency not being there either. Okay, so the Kaspa one, for me at least, kind of irrelevant, maybe a solo miner, something of that sort of add-on, zero interest in it. The one that is appealing though, the one that is a game changer, is the Alephium one. So 2 terahash, 500 watts, 1,300 bucks. Okay, so this price is a game changer. This is going to change things. Reason why? It's already wrecking their own huge price reduction with the AL3. Okay, this was already a massive change because the AL1 again was 30 grand. This guy came in, wrecked them, right? Going down to nearly a third for a very equivalent miner, right? So this thing is already getting wrecked by this guy. So chances are the AL3 will get a price reduction. Let's look at why. So this guy's 15 terahash, 12,300 bucks, 3,500 watts. Okay, so easy math. To get to the equivalent, you would need what? About 8 of these guys, and in fact, it's going to bring you more. So 8 of these guys is going to be what? 16 terahash, 4,000 watts. So slightly more. The efficiency is slightly worse, but it's close enough where we can call it pretty identical. The kicker though is the price. The price per terahash is where it changes things. So again, 8 units, 1,300 a unit, $10,400. Okay, so if we were to try to get the same hash rate, or actually not even, we would get more. We would get 16 versus the 15. It'd be 10,400 bucks. And we know that typically the smaller ASICs, there is a premium for having that smaller slice of the pie. Also factoring in that this thing does have an integrated PSU on top of that. Okay. To me, that's immediately saying that this guy, obviously right here, huge price difference. So this guy likely on the next batch, or maybe they hooked their people up who did pre-order because it hasn't even shipped yet. Maybe they lower this to a more reasonable price, somewhere between 8 to 9K. Right, which again, basing it off of this guy, that's where this guy needs to be. So the crazy aspect here is that they already are wrecking themselves, right? So it's one thing to try to wreck Bitmain, But now they're kind of eating themselves. And then at this point also, they're definitely killing the gold chills, right? And this is kind of the strategy we had talked about with try to be like forward thinking, right? We're saying that that would have been, even prior to the release of the AL3, a mid-tier Alephium ASIC, because we knew they had the efficiency. A mid-tier ASIC would wreck all of them, right? And this is why we said that it would wreck the Bitmain AL1 as well as the little gold shells, okay? And realistically, they didn't even need to release the AL3 because of this price point and the form factor. If they would have just released this guy at this price, this with one unit would have just wrecked everybody, right? Because then at this point, because of the price, because of the density, obviously it's not super dense, but because of the price and the efficiency here, this would be way more appealing all day, right? Who the hell would buy an AL1 with this thing? And even on the small scale, you're killing all the gold shells as well, right? Which Gold Shell hasn't even announced one of them. They have the ALBox 2 Pro, which we did a video on because the specs have been released by the resellers. They haven't even officially unveiled it yet, and it's already decimated by this thing. And this is them, again, just sandbagging, which is what happened with the Kaspa ASICs. You would think they would have learned from that. Again, they just continue to make more and more mistakes, and it's just them being greedy, right? They should have just dropped them all. And as a matter of fact, they shouldn't have even just done so many units. If they would have just kept one SKU, be done with it. Because again, all of them, it's the same chips, just in different form factors. Okay, so like this guy, for example, 1 terahash, 480 watts. So the IceRiver unit is twice the hash rate for about the same wattage and about the same price. Okay, so this guy immediately needs to get cut in half. Okay, it's also wrecking their little Echo unit, 4.4 terahash, 1800 watts. You would need only 2 of these guys to be at 4 terahash, and you'd be at half the wattage. And this is where we're saying that as you scale, the difference in efficiency starts getting more and more noticeable. Okay, so then at this point, again, it'd be $2,600 for a unit making almost the same hash rate at half the wattage, and something that you could actually have indoors, versus again the Echo at this 1800 watts, if you're on 120 volt, is a no-go. Okay, so again, with this mid-tier unit, like we said, it's wrecking everybody, including themselves, right? It's even wrecking the AL3 at this point that it needs to get reduced, but it's wrecking everybody in one shot, which is just crazy. And at this point, again, like we've mentioned, it's like a race to zero, because at this point it's like what the hell? And it's crazy that they're so aggressive, because realistically this thing could have been priced even at like 1,500 and it would still do just as well. It would have the same exact effects on the market. So extremely aggressive price. These IC boys are not messing around. They're definitely going for the kill. They're going for the headshot. Like they're going crazy. Like at this point, it's this thing, it needs to get a massive price reduction. And again, everybody who ordered this thing, just like we said from the beginning, extreme risk. Do not be surprised to see either these guys with another extreme cut or IceRiver themselves beyond this batch if prices stay the same. So a lot of this is going to have to do with what happens with the price action these next 2 months. Okay, and at this point, it feels like, seems like they're freaking bearish. Like, I just doesn't make any sense considering what's likely to happen or what can potentially happen with the price by this time. Okay, so to me, it seems like they have zero confidence in the price action. Okay, so just a weird release. Let's look at profitability real quick. Pretty freaking good. Currently, your profit would be about 873. You'd be making about 5 alpha a day. That's at the current hash rate, but just keep in mind, obviously, that's going to change drastically, especially with this unit. So this is another thing to factor in if you're considering getting this thing. This is going to definitely accelerate the hash rate, right? This is an extreme price point, extremely appealing unit in all capacities. Okay, so the strategy here, or what you would be betting against, is the fact that this guy is essentially going to take over the network, right? Because then at this point, the AL3 immediately unappealing at this price. Arguably, even at like 9 to 10K, I would still go with this guy, just because again, this is a hedge against other price reductions. Who's to say Bitmain doesn't say, like, you know what, screw it, we're tired of playing this game, we're just going to reduce our AL1 down to 5K, sell out that batch, and call it a day. That's, at this point, it's why are they even playing this game, right? They're getting outclassed by IceRiver in the pricing game, and it's to the point where these icy boys apparently do not give an F, and they're just going to go to zero. They're going to go as low as they can, and it depends on the viewpoint here, right? Essentially, they're almost like cannibalizing themselves. It's crazy, right? So at this point, it's one of those things is, do you continue to chase? Because like we've mentioned before, is that with these like hype ASICs, anything that's kind of overpriced, any ASIC essentially that's over like the $2,000 price point, you're paying that premium based on the profitability. Okay, so you're chasing that, and we know that these are just going to continue to drop. Okay, so at this point, obviously, even if this guy dropped to 8-9K because of this game changer, I would not be interested. Would I be interested in this guy though at this price point? Sure, because again, it's almost not necessarily a hedge, but it's less risky because again, if that does happen, if the AL1, AL3 do go to 5K, meaning this guy may get cut down in half, going from $1,300 down to $500-600, not the biggest hit in the world. But when you're going from, again, 30K down to potentially 8-9K, potentially even lower, within the matter of weeks, again, not even over a long time frame, this is a matter of weeks, super wrecked. Okay, so it just kind of depends on your viewpoint here. Are you going to double down? Are you going to continue to lower that cost basis, or just going to buy the coin? And honestly, guys, with the way it's been going with these hype ASICs, probably not something I'd recommend to buy. Because at this point, again, it's very tricky for the bulk of you, right? Again, it just depends on viewpoint, depends on what you're doing. Like for me personally, will I be buying one? Honestly, yes. And it's going to be to lower the cost basis of these other guys. Okay, at that point, it's going to lower the cost basis. I'm going to continue to grow. Am I going to get a ton of these? Am I going to get just probably one and then see how price action goes? Potentially. But again, that's just my case, my viewpoint, just because I do see value in it long term. Okay, so I'm not focused on short-term rewards. I'm focused on long-term rewards. Okay, but like we mentioned, even with those things, don't be surprised if the prices get cut in half, and don't be surprised to see your yield get reduced drastically, which is what we talked about with those guys. My expectation with those guys is by this time to be earning about half an alpha a day. Currently, it's about one a day. Okay, is it going to go down to half pretty soon? Probably, right? It's just going to depend on how many units of these guys they can essentially make. Because again, at this point, zero interest in this guy. Even at $500, I'd rather get the IceRiver unit all day. Zero interest in this guy. Again, even at $1,500, zero interest in it because of the efficiency and the fact that this guy's just massively more appealing. Again, regardless, it's even at this point where it's almost like regardless of price, zero interest in these. The AL3 potentially at 12K, nope. At 8-9K, nope. This guy at this price, sure. If these guys, if things continue bearish and they continue down, go into the 5K range, at that point, I'd be willing to dip my toes. Because then at that point, again, if it gets reduced in half from there, down to 3K, the risk isn't as great, right? So to each their own. Just understand that if you do look at these profit calculators, looking at it, just factor in your yield is going to get cut in half. As far as the price action of Alephium, we know what typically happens in the cycle in about a month or so, potentially even sooner. So you can factor that in. So those are things to consider also, that if that does happen, then what do you think is going to happen to the price of these things? Interest is going to go up, and at these prices, because they're so low, chances are it's going to sell out. Currently though, based on today's sentiment, because again, mention anything about mining, it's all like, which is fine. I get people's opinions on it, and I understand it. So it just depends on your viewpoint, depends on your goals on what you're trying to do. So now in terms of future outlook, like if you were to get this thing, even regardless of the price, as far as yield expectations, so currently the hash rate is up to about 15-16 petahash, depending on the time you look at it. So factoring that in, this is where it gets kind of tricky because of the amount of units it would take to double the hash rate essentially. So at this point, again, let's factor in 15 petahash. Let's do it for just easy math purposes. or let's even go to 16, right? If we go to 16 at that point, that's how much it would take to double the current hash rate, which would essentially halve your yields. Okay, so if we go up to 32 petahash, which is possible, again, it's pretty much going to be up to IceRiver how fast they can produce these things. So at this point, it would take 16,000 terahash would be what? So each unit is 2 terahash, so easy math divided in half. It would take about 8,000 units to double the hash rate. So if they release 8,000 of these, which again, to me, nobody's going to be buying the gold shells. Nobody's going to be buying the AL1s. And then potentially even the AL3s are a risky bet. So this guy may dictate the hash rate, at least for now, at least until this guy gets a massive price reduction down to like under 8K, 7K, 6K. For now, this is going to take over. Okay, so it would take about 8,000 units for it to double. Is that likely to happen over time? Of course. Over time, it's going to go up massively. We're only at 16 petahash. This thing is easily going to be, I mean, we saw what happened with Kaspa, especially if Alephium does what we expect it to do. Okay, so again, do not be surprised to, by the time you get this thing, I don't think they're going to be producing 8,000 units right off the rip. Maybe 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, or maybe they bump it up to 3,000. Maybe they have been producing them for quite a while. We don't really know, but that's kind of what your bet needs to be. But at this point, you know it's going to take 8,000 units of this guy to double the hash rate. Okay, because again, in my opinion, this is going to take over the network unless they decide to do a larger mid-tier, which is also possible. At this point, it's nothing's off the table. Okay, so extreme risk, but at the same time, for the price point, extremely appealing. So like if I had 0 of these guys, I would 100% get 1, maybe 2. At this point, am I getting 1 at least for sure? Yes. And again, it's just to lower that cost basis. Okay, and it's just to kind of keep going in, right? Again, is it a recommended strategy for most of you guys? Probably not. Again, all of this is going to be dependent on your viewpoint, how you view things. I've made my position clear. I don't focus on current ROI or profitability. I just continue to grow to lower that cost basis and just continue upwards and onwards. Some work out extremely well, others don't. But again, those 1 or 2 that do compensate for everything else. But again, the goal for me is just to keep growing, keep stacking. If ALPH does go under $1, I will definitely be buying more. If not, my growth in that bag will be through mining it. Okay, and this guy will definitely be one to watch. As far as the Kaspa one goes, again, for me personally, just 0 interest in a smaller one, just because again, the big boy units are so cheap. Like it just doesn't, for me at least. Maybe if the efficiency was on par with the Bitmain unit, then we'd be talking. Like if it was 4 terahash at 500 watts, now we'd be talking. Right, because then at that point you're able to scale down the KS5 Pro from Bitmain essentially, which isn't the case here. Okay, because at this point again you would need 10 of these to be the equivalent of that. 10 of these would bring you up to 5,000 watts. Okay, so and then also $5,000, right? Comparing the price of the KS5 being at $2,500, no. The AL2 though, to each your own. It's going to depend on your viewpoint, but this is going to change things. And don't be surprised to see other big changes. Okay, so it's going to happen, right? So whether people like it or not, this AL3 is going to get reduced because again, otherwise it's gonna make more sense all day to get this thing. So we're gonna have to see what happens with this price point. Will they compensate people maybe who bought from IceRiver directly, potentially, or maybe it's just not going to be reflected until a future batch. Maybe they'll do the coupon thing, which again I'm not a big fan of, but this is the risk, and this is why it's extremely risky to play with these hype ASICs. Okay, so I get people's frustration, but again, it's from people chasing the profits, people looking at it. You have to look long term, you have to look at the yield, and again, it's not going to be for everybody. Okay, let me know in the comments, what do you guys think? Is this something you're interested in at all? Are you going to avoid this whole thing, which I wouldn't recommend? I mean, at this point, realistically, the better play has been these longer term plays, which even then has been tricky just because of the price reductions with everything. It's been a hard game, bros. Luckily, it's one that has worked out for me in some capacity, and it's just from taking those risks, jumping in when a lot of times it doesn't make sense when you look at the ROI. Again, to each your own. I'm going to harp on that. To each their own. But let me know in the comments, guys, what do you guys think? Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. And I am out.